This is not a real video. This is a mock video for a school assignment. So Brittany, I'm glad to see that you came back this week. We're on session 3 now, and I think that you've been making some good progress, but I'm interested to know how your homework assignment went. We assigned you to the thought record. You were going to write down your thoughts, any negative thoughts that you were having, things like that, and then you were going to work on writing down your strengths and your weaknesses. Can you tell me a little bit about how that went for you?
It didn't. I didn't do it. It just, I couldn't sit still long enough to do it.
Okay.
I just, tried, but I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it.
Okay. When you say you tried, can you explain to me kind of how that went? Bless you.
Thanks. So, I sat down and I started trying to write it, but, I couldn't, I don't know, I felt bad, I couldn't think of, my strengths and stuff like that. I couldn't think of what I was good at and what was good about me. So, I just quit. I couldn't do it.
Okay, but how long did you give it?
Maybe 10 minutes.
Maybe 10 minutes? That's actually longer than I thought you were going to say, so that's a pretty good effort. So while you're sitting there, can you explain to me maybe some of the thoughts and things that you were having?
I don't know, I just felt guilty about trying to sit there and write about myself. And I didn't know, I couldn't think of anything good about myself to write as a strength. And so it was just frustrating and just decided not to do it.
Would you say that you've always been that way? Had a hard time thinking about your strengths or weaknesses, or is that something that's new since this trauma in your life?
I guess it's probably something that's new.
Okay.
Because before I kind of thought I was, there's a lot of things I was good at and a lot of good attributes about me, but now, I don't really think there's a whole lot of good.
Do you think those attributes and those things that were good about you before have changed?
Yeah.
Okay. So what do you do, let's kind of change directions a little bit. Tell me about the thought record. How did the thought record go, writing down the negative thoughts that you were having and things like that, documenting it?
I wrote a couple down, but most of them I didn't really write down. Cause I didn't want to put them in a book.
Okay.
I would have them, but I didn't want them to be out there for ever. And I felt like putting them in a book was writing them down and making it more permanent.
Okay.
Versus me just thinking about it and kind of trying to push it away.
Okay. So you felt like that was kind of just putting it out there was making it more solid and a reality?
Yeah, I guess so. It made it more real if I wrote it down.
Okay.
And I didn't really want to do that.
Okay. When we discussed doing that, we talked a little bit about, and maybe I didn't discuss it enough, about how being aware of those thoughts and writing them down and doing that was going to help you pay attention to them and was going to help us learn what those were and get to the core beliefs of it, things like that. So I understand how it could be overwhelming, to write them down, and the reality of that, could be very shocking. But at the same time, what I hear you explaining is that you're trying to avoid them. Would you say that's correct?
Maybe. I wouldn't look at it like that. I don't know. I might be trying to avoid them a little bit, so that way I don't really have to deal with it as much. But I guess I didn't really think of it as avoiding it when I was doing it.
Okay. So what do you do to cope with this trauma and these thoughts and this overwhelming pressure that you feel?
Well, I have a lot of medication I take. So usually I can just take double what the doctor gave me.
Okay.
Or what they prescribed me. And it'll allow me to sleep. And then I don't have to worry about it.
Okay.
So the medicine helps a lot, and I usually just take that.
Okay. So is this your regular doctor that's prescribing this medication? Your general practitioner?
Yeah, but I actually go to a couple different doctors, so I'm able to get what I need instead of because she wouldn't give me all of those.
Okay.
So I have a couple different doctors I go to, and then they each give me one, and then I can combine them all.
Okay.
But they don't really know.
Okay. Would you say that that's a healthy way to cope?
I mean, it hasn't killed me yet, so I don't know that it's like necessarily super healthy, but I think taking medicine that's prescribed to me by doctors is probably better than like buying heroin off the street.
Right. Right. Well, I understand that, the need that you have to want to push these emotions and these feelings away.
Mm-hmm.
But in the same sense, at the end of that, they're not going anywhere. They're still there at the end of the medication and the end of all of that stuff. So that concerns me that you're self-medicating and that you're going to these different doctors and that you're seeking the medication and you're getting it in a legal fashion, but how you're using it is simply, covering up, masking the problem. Would you agree with that or no?
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably not going about it the most ethical way to get my medicine, but I mean, I don't know what else to do, so.
How long have you been doing this with the medication?
Probably about 6 or 7 months.
Okay.
So a while.
Okay. And about 6 or 7 months compared to when this trauma happened in your life. So you started about a month or two afterwards?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
Okay. So it makes you sleepy. When you wake up or when you decide, okay, now I'm going to go take this medication, can you explain to me how you're feeling?
Like overwhelmed. And then I'm having all the thoughts about what happened and stuff, and so it kind of like closes in on me and I feel like I'm drowning.
Okay.
And so I don't want to deal with that, so I just take the medicine so I can go to sleep. If I stay busy, I'm okay, but it's like whenever I'm not busy and it's like my downtime, that's whenever.
Okay. So you've got to stay busy, you've got to take the medication, sleep, you feel overwhelmed, a lot of anxiety and stress. Do you have flashbacks of the trauma?
Sometimes it just depends. Like, I can't have my ceiling fan on because the sound reminds me of it.
Okay.
And then, like if I go to a restaurant or something and there's certain sounds around that sound like what happened, then I have a flashback then.
Okay.
So I don't really go to restaurants much anymore either, just because of that.
Okay. So you're avoiding a lot. So this, what you're explaining to me is how your coping mechanisms of how you're dealing with what happened in your life. So you're avoiding a lot, which is, that's normal for someone who has PTSD, to avoid some of those situations and those triggers, to try to stay busy, to cover them up, to try to cope with medications or other things. And so that's kind of why we were going back to we're going about this in a slow fashion. But that's kind of where we were going, in the direction of we've got to get to the root of what you're feeling and how you're feeling it and how you're coping with those emotions. And so that's going to take us back to the thought record, which can help identify for yourself and for me, these are the things that I'm thinking that are overwhelming. These are the things that I'm thinking that are triggering me. These are the thoughts that I'm having that say, I'm not important enough to write down my strengths and my weaknesses. I'm not important enough to focus on myself, or things like that. So that was kind of the purpose of why we were doing that homework, was it may not seem so focused on trauma per se, but it's going to get us there. It's going to get us to better coping mechanisms, to a healthier lifestyle, to healthier mental health, your physical health as well. And these medications are just simply covering up the problem. But at the end of the day, this trauma has happened in your life. And so we've got to figure out how to move forward in a successful manner. When you take the medications and, you wake up or whatever, tell me how you're feeling then.
I usually feel a lot better because I've usually had like a dream where everything was normal and nothing had ever happened. And so, like, for the first 20 minutes when I'm awake, I'm kind of like euphoric and optimistic and think that it's going to be a great day.
Okay.
Until something happens, and then it kind of puts me back in that past of what happened.
Okay. So for you, your flashbacks and stuff are more when you're awake and when things trigger you than when you're sleeping. And when you're sleeping, you're having... Okay. Yeah. Okay, that makes a lot of sense as to why you're doing that. And certainly that's, if that's where you're finding peace, that can become addictive as well. On top of the medication being addictive, you get addicted to those good feelings and all that stuff. But what we want to do is we want to work towards making those feelings and emotions a more permanent way of life. That this trauma isn't going to define you moving forward. And so, what are some things that you did before the trauma? Let's think about some things that you did when life was good. What did you do for fun?
I went paddleboarding a lot. I would jog and hike a lot.
Okay.
Those are the main things I did, because I lived by a lake with big mountains.
Okay. So do you have any guilt now that you don't do those things, or that you don't, that you're not euphoric and things like that in your life? Like how you are when you first wake up. Do you have any guilt that that's not how you feel?
I mean, sometimes I feel, like I get invited to go do that stuff because, I was in a paddleboarding group, and I usually turn them down, so I have guilt about that.
Okay.
Because, they keep asking when I'm going to come, and I just keep telling them, well, I might be able to next week, and I just always make up excuses about why I can't come.
Are they aware of what has happened in your life?
No.
Okay.
I don't tell them, yeah.
Okay. Who would you say is the closest person to you? Tell me about your friends.
Bob, I mean, he's pretty cool. And Susie, we're close, but I'm probably closer with Bob than I am with Susie.
Are these work friends, or?
No, they're people that I met in the paddleboarding group, but, like I said, I've kind of distanced myself from them, too, because we have, a group text, and people in the group text, they invite me, and I can decline them and stuff, but, Bob and Susie are the ones that are more pushy about stuff, because they know me a little better, and so they're wanting to know why I'm not coming, why do I keep blowing them off, they know I like doing it, so they're probably ones that know me a little better.
Okay. How would you feel about reaching out to maybe the two of them and say, some things have happened in my life, I'm not ready for the big group, but I'd love to see y'all, could we go paddleboarding, on this day, and maybe just set up a small thing, or even just with one of them, not even both, but to do something to get yourself back out there, back into at least one area of normalcy in your life that you can hang on to. Something that wasn't only normal in your life, but something that you really enjoyed. How would you feel about doing that?
I mean, if it wasn't a big group, I could probably do it. I could ask them if they'd want to go with just me and do it, before the groups come out in the morning.
Okay. Because this behavior of this medication and this avoidance and all that stuff, we really got to find a way out of it. So what are your suggestions? What ideas do you have that you think maybe this is one area that I really missed, or something I was really good at, or something that I really enjoyed that I think I'm willing to maybe step out and try a little bit more? What's something you can think of?
I really liked hiking.
Okay.
And there's some mountains in other countries I've always wanted to hike.
All right.
But I just never made it over there, and then everything happened, and I really didn't want to go because I didn't want to travel that far by myself.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and maybe start small. I don't think that I would suggest, taking off, going out of country or doing anything like that. Mm-hmm. But when you hiked, who did you hike with?
Mainly Susie.
Okay.
She usually is the one that with me. Bob's not much of a hiker. He's kind of lazy sometimes, but paddleboarding's the extent of his physical activities.
Well, all of it's above the extent of mine. So maybe reach out to her and say, hey, I'd like to go on a hike. Yeah. Has she said anything to you about hiking?
No, I think because I keep turning down the paddleboarding, and I'm kind of pushing them away, that she hasn't even tried because she knows I'm probably just gonna say no.
Okay. So maybe if you're saying no on the paddleboarding side and you reach out to her and say, hey, I'm going for a hike, I'd love for you to join me, she might, be like, oh, okay, and that's something that y'all can do, just the two of y'all, and that you really miss, that isn't quite so overwhelming.
Yeah.
So, I was suggesting the paddleboard, but either one of those, any way that you can do it, I'm going to challenge you to make that extra effort this week to really step out of there. Now, with that is going to come a lot of anxiety.
Yeah.
And we're going to need to be prepared for that. So let's talk about how you can work through that when that comes. When you think now of, okay, let's just think about when they text you and invite you to go paddleboarding. What are the thoughts that run through your head?
If I got there, then everybody's going to know what happened. I got there, everybody's going to be whispering about what happened.
Okay.
People are going to be looking at me with those sad eyes. That I can tell they're like, oh, that poor girl. Feeling all empathetic. People are going to be like overbearing, trying to help me more than like they normally would. Like if I fall off and stuff, they're going to think, like, I guess walking on eggshells around me.
Okay.
And I don't like that. Because that just makes it worse.
Okay. But right now you said that none of them know.
Right.
So do you think maybe you're more internalizing that paranoia?
Maybe.
Okay.
That might be what it is. Because like I said, I haven't told them. As far as I know, they don't know. But I don't know. Like I feel like if I go out there, like they can see through me. Like they're going to know something happened.
Because you feel like your behavior and everything is different. You're a different person.
Yeah. Like they're going to pick up on something happened. That's why she hasn't been coming out. And then they're just going to look at me all sad and be like, oh, this poor girl. Something happened to her. That's why she hasn't been coming out here.
And that's got to be an overwhelming feeling to think of. Everybody sees what's going on inside of me or sees my personal business. And certainly those are things to be concerned with, I guess. But do you really want to live the rest of your life the way you have been living it right now? Just taking medication all the time, sleeping all the time, avoiding things and people. So at some point, you're going to have to get back out there.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you think maybe sooner rather than later to get back in the scheme of things? Because the longer that you separate yourself from these things and these friends, the harder it's going to be to get back and have those relationships. And I'm not saying that you should get out there and you should fake it, or you should act like everything's okay, or you should whatever. But you should also know that your story is your story and you don't have to tell anybody.
Yeah.
And you get out there and you do what you're doing, and if they're like, well, you just seem really down, just be like, I've just had a lot going on, I'm exhausted. You can tell them the truth without them having to know any details of it.
Yeah.
And still feel okay and secure, like you're still controlling what it is they know and how much they see or whatever. But the longer you go withdrawing from everybody and trying to cope in ways that are not healthy, the harder it's going to be.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So the other thing that I want to talk about is, we kind of took your homework, and that's kind of the direction this session has gone, but I feel like the issues with the homework last week are things that really need to be addressed. So in writing down your strengths and your weaknesses, you said, I'm just not worth spending this time on, or I'm not worth, saying those things about. Why do you feel like this tragedy has changed who you are?
I don't know. I mean, I just feel like guiltier now, like trying to work on myself and try to do things for myself whenever like all that stuff happened. Like, I don't know. I feel like I should be working on things for other people or something instead of working on myself.
Okay. Was working on things for other people something that you did before?
I mean, a little bit. It was kind of a combination of both, but not really like so much for everybody else.
Okay. So do you feel like putting yourself in doing things for you is like, poor pitiful me, I've got to work on me? Or
yeah, like I don't want people to think that I can't handle stuff.
Okay.
I don't want them to think that I can't take on projects at work, or I can't do this, or I can't do that just because something happened to me. Like, even if they don't know it happened, like, I don't want them to be like, oh, like, we better let her have the smaller project instead of the larger project, because she's probably can't handle the larger project right now. Like, I don't want them to think I'm weak.
And that's exactly the word I was fixing to use. What you're describing to me is that you don't want to be viewed as a weak person.
Yeah.
And does part of you think that this incident has made you weak?
I mean, it's definitely made me more cautious.
Okay.
Which I think could be portrayed as looking weak, because I'm being more cautious.
So if you focus on you and you write down your strengths and your weaknesses, you're afraid they're going to show more of a weak side or a vulnerable side of you that you're afraid to show?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably, yeah.
Okay.
Sounds about right.
It's okay to be vulnerable, and it's certainly okay to find those weak spots in our personalities or character. So what I want you to do this week is I want you to really work on those things. I want you to work on, we're going to go back and write down your thoughts that you're having on a regular basis. And we're going to work on writing down your strengths and weaknesses. And then we've added on that extra one to reach out to Susie and to see if y'all can connect on some level, even if it's doing something different or a new adventure that y'all can create together that isn't something y'all would have done in the past, okay?
Okay.
And we're going to see where that goes. And we're going to stick with those until you can accomplish them, okay?
All right.
All right. And I'll see you back here on Thursday, okay?
Okay.
All right. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.